Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast of the launch of a Rocket Lab Electron rocket with the MATS satellite for OHB Sweden. This is the Mesospheric Airglow Aerosol Tomography and Spectroscopy satellite. And this is ultimately going to be used by the Swedish National Space Agency for researching the upper atmosphere. Atmospheric waves and oh my goodness, Bennu, my cat, who you see a little picture of on the left there, literally just drew blood from my arm as he reached up and said hello. I went to scratch my arm and my fingers came off bloody. Anyway, this will be used by the Swedish National Space Agency, or SNSA, to research the upper atmosphere, atmospheric waves, and the interaction of the upper atmosphere with the winds and weather of the lower atmosphere. And, importantly, this will be Rocket Lab's second attempt to catch their first stage booster in midair using a helicopter. So if you're not familiar with it, jeez, I'm gonna bleed all over my chair. If you're not familiar with this process, what they do is the rocket comes down on a parachute over the ocean, and then they follow it with a Sikorsky S-92 helicopter. Now, Sikorsky is a Russian name, but Sikorsky is an American company. They actually are the same company that manufactures the Black Hawk helicopter. And yeah, so the rocket's going to come down on a parachute. There is a second tether line coming off of the parachute line that's dragged by a drogue parachute, so it kind of stretches out. And then there's a hook that hangs down on a long line from the helicopter, which they simply grab that, they hook it on that line that's being dragged behind the the booster's parachute cord, and thereby hooking the rocket. And they tried this once before, back in May, and it was partially successful. At that time, they did get a successful hook on the rocket tether, but they subsequently released it because, as the pilot described, the rocket was inducing excessive forces on the helicopter. Basically, the rocket in the swaying under the parachute was jerking the helicopter around too much. Now, this is a big helicopter. This is a the crewed version, CREWED, the crewed version of this helicopter, accommodates 17 people. And so this is a pretty robust helicopter, not the biggest one out there, but it's quite capable. So I don't know if they've made any changes to the helicopter this time around, or if they've changed their process, or perhaps their capture equipment in some way to hopefully achieve a different result, so they don't have to release the rocket. Now, you may ask, why catch the rocket in midair as opposed to either landing it like SpaceX does, or splashing it down and then fishing it out of the water? Well, the latter is pretty easy to address or to answer, and that is salt water is terribly corrosive. Salt water is horrible for especially metal parts. The engine would be perhaps irreparably damaged, or at least they would have to do a lot of refurbishment if the engine in particular was subjected to the ocean water for any length of time. As for the first, why don't they land it propulsively like SpaceX, or even sprout wings on the thing and land it on an airfield? That requires additional mass, additional complexity, additional systems that would need to be developed and tested, and it would also introduce additional points of failure. This is actually a very, the parachute capture technique is actually a very elegant solution that maximizes their ability to use the rocket for what it was meant for, that is, delivering payloads into orbit. Because all that extra mass, the landing legs, the extra fuel needed to perform the landing burn in the case of SpaceX, et cetera, the extra avionics or whatever, all of those things add mass and reduce the amount of fuel that can be used in the service of the actual payload, which is the point of the rocket in the first place, is to put things in space. And so Rocket Lab, with their small form factor Electron rocket, compared to Falcon 9, it's a little thing. They are maximizing the capability of their diminutive rocket by catching it in midair and not having to waste any fuel or mass on unnecessary systems. Now, Falcon 9 would be very difficult to catch midair because it's a huge booster. I mean, it's 270 feet tall, something like that. Whereas Electron is maybe half that height or less. Let me look at the specs here. Electron, 17 meters, if you want to convert that to feet. But yeah, much smaller rocket, and I don't think there's a helicopter that would have, like any helicopter in the world, with sufficient lifting power to catch the Falcon 9 booster. But let's see, we are maybe about 5 minutes from the start of the official broadcast. Let me see if you have any questions. Mark Hammond, hailing from Huntsville, Alabama, USA, with the Rocket City. I've been there one time. I visited, I swung through there with, was I with a friend? No, I swung through there after having visited a friend in Tennessee on my way down to Biloxi, Mississippi a long time ago for some Air Force training. But yeah, I visited the U.S. Space and Rocket Center there, saw the Saturn V exhibit. There are 3 Saturn Vs on display around the country, one in Huntsville, one at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and one at Johnson Space Center in Houston. And I have seen 2 of the 3. I've not been to the Houston one. So, Denise Campbell says it's pretty amazing what they've been able to do with the size of Rocket Lab's rockets. It really is. I mean, they've had some mishaps in the past, but so has everyone, basically. And they've bounced right back, and they have a very robust launch system that it does its job very well. Now, it's not a heavy lift vehicle. It's not going to, you know, loft any large space station components or whatever, but it can still get payloads up there. It can get payloads to the Venus. It can get payloads to the moon. Probably could get payloads to Mars. Just depends on the mass of the payload and the length of time to get there. You know, in order to get somewhere fast, you need more fuel. But if you have time to spend by gradually, you know, basically increasing your orbital distance until you reach the object, like with the Capstone mission to the moon, it took them what 4 months or something to reach the moon. But all right, I'm just checking on my checking on my battle wound. So, so I guess kind of light on questions. So what should we expect today? I need to fix the tracker here. Oh, wow. It disappeared. Oh, I had my tracker all set up. And so I had a tracker running for the helicopter, which took off out of Christchurch maybe an hour ago, or I don't know, 45 minutes ago, something like that. And it was headed in an east-southeast direction, so out into the open ocean to the east of Christchurch, which is also south of Mahia. So if you look at the map, let's make sure that the map is visible. It is not. All right, so let me change things up. Just a moment. Vivaldi. Let me switch to my there we go. All right. So now you can see the full map. So if you look at if you know, this is a map of New Zealand. You've got the South Island, the North Island. Mahia Peninsula is it's actually sort of midway on the eastern shore of the North Island. If we zoom in here, this funny looking little peninsula here is Mahia. And if we zoom in on the tip, this is the Rocket Lab launch site. All right. And we zoom back out. Down here, Christchurch is where the helicopter, the Sikorsky S-92, took off from, headed in an east-southeast direction, sort of to the south of this small island east of New Zealand. This, what is this called? Te One or Te One? I don't know what the proper pronunciation is, but it looks like we've lost tracking on the helicopter. So I will keep my eye on it, and Let me get... All right, let me get that back there. And I will go ahead and take off the inset view because it doesn't look like we're going to have tracking for the helicopter. I don't know why they turned off the transponder, or maybe they didn't turn off the transponder. Maybe it's simply, I don't know, maybe I would say maybe out of range, but you can have aircraft over the middle of the ocean which are still being still communicating with satellites what their position is. So who knows? But Rocket Lab should be starting pretty soon. And since we won't have tracking, I have to adjust my video I'm going to show for you, because I had the Rocket Lab stream configured to be in an inset slightly smaller window to allow for the tracker. But with no tracking, there's no need for that. All right. Okay. All right, so we have questions. Denise Campbell, did Bennu nail you again today? Well, if by nail you mean scratch my arm, yes, he did. He did. He was just trying to get my attention. He had brought a small brush, like a paintbrush, to me earlier, and that's not supposed to be a toy. He brings me pens and other things to throw for him. He likes to play fetch. But I wasn't going to throw the brush, and so I set the brush on the table, and I think that irritated him. So he does this thing where he stretches and he goes meow. It's very cute, but when he stretches, his claws come out, and it got me. TJ Kaz, the tracker needs a tracker. That's right, it does. And I can't see the alignment of the tracking window while I'm moving the window around, so kind of operating in the blind. BC Stargazer, get to the chopper. Perfect. Kalim Gold, how are you getting on with the YouTube money strike and its resolution? So it wasn't a strike, it was just demonetization, but I know that's what you mean. It's still in place. I have reapplied a couple of times. I actually went in and with a bulldozer into my channel, and this was very painful. I went through and deleted something like 65% of my videos. I deleted all the ones that I didn't, that were straight restreams that I didn't add anything to by either doing a Q&A or adding telemetry or whatever, you know. And in an attempt to appease YouTube so that they'll allow me to be remonetized. I have reapplied for monetization, but I haven't got a reply back yet. So, but Rocket Lab is now live, so I will go ahead and leave you with a few seconds of music before they begin their broadcast. Thank you for coming and enjoy the show. Hopefully we have a successful catch today. If I can figure out my doohickey here.
Hello and welcome to the Rocket Lab launch coverage for today's mission, our 32nd Electron launch and our next recovery mission that we have aptly named Catch Me If You Can. You can see the Electron rocket on your screen as it stands ready for the countdown to liftoff from Rocket Lab's Pad B at Launch Complex 1 in Mahia, New Zealand. My name is Muriel Baker and I will be with you through today's launch and recovery attempt from Rocket Lab's Mission Control Center. We are several hours into launch operations now, and about 20 minutes or so to launch right at the top of today's launch window with the T0 set for 06:27 New Zealand local time or 15:27 UTC. We have had a clean run through the count and remain on track to launch right on time today. And today's launch includes a single satellite headed to low Earth orbit for the Swedish National Space Agency. I'll tell you more about the MATS science research mission shortly. But excitingly, today is the day we make our next attempt at catching Electron with a helicopter as it returns from space. For those of you unfamiliar with our recovery program, we are evolving Electron into the world's first reusable orbital small rocket by using a helicopter to catch Electron's first stage as it descends back to Earth after launch. Right now, our recovery helicopter is stationed over the Pacific Ocean off New Zealand's east coast, waiting for Electron's launch. And from mission control, the pilots will receive the signal from our recovery team to move in and tail the returning rocket as it descends under parachute before they make an attempt to hook onto Electron's parachute line, secure the rocket underneath the helicopter, and transport it back to land. We will have cameras on board Electron's first stage feeding us live footage of today's recovery attempt. There is also a live camera feed from the helicopter that we'll share, but we do expect some dropouts in the video footage from both the rocket and the helicopter during today's operations. If the feed freezes, don't panic, we'll bring it back up as quickly as possible, and we will stay with you on this program to bring you updates from Mission Control. We are still obviously in the test phase of our recovery program, so everything learned today is a useful step toward the ultimate goal of catching and reflying Electron. In case the catch is missed today, we have prepared to recover it from the ocean, like we have done on previous recovery missions, so we'll bring you updates on those operations too. Using a helicopter to catch a falling rocket is obviously not as simple as it sounds. It's a complex operation that requires precision, perfect timing, and for our helicopter pilots, complete calm under pressure and a steady hand. But here's how they'll do it.
Electron is one of the world's most innovative rockets.
Our motivation for making Electron a reusable rocket is to lower manufacturing costs and create more launch opportunities for small satellite missions, like the one on board Electron today for the Swedish National Space Agency through OHB Sweden. Called MATS, the satellite's acronym stands for Mesospheric Airglow, Aerosol Tomography and Spectroscopy, a bit of a mouthful, and its mission is to investigate atmospheric waves above Earth to better understand how our planet's upper layer influences wind and weather patterns here on the ground. A bit like how waves in the ocean are generated in different ways, can travel and strengthen over long distances and influence water conditions at the beach, waves in the atmosphere can link together different parts of our climate system, and MATS is on a mission to find out more. Here's more about the satellite and the teams behind it.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time. Or any length of time you wanted to have. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.
We are thrilled to welcome MATS and the Swedish National Space Agency for launch from LC1 today. We are coming up on the go, no-go poll for today's mission. Run from the Mission Control Center by our launch director, we will get a status update from each of the operators and whether they are tracking to time for launch. Let's listen in.
And to all operators, this is LD on mission court. We are proceeding now with a go, no-go sequence. Stage,
Stage is go.
avionics,
Avionics is go.
GNC,
GNC is go.
recon,
Recon is go.
T1,
T1 is go.
GC,
GC is go.
PLS,
PLS is go.
RSO,
RSO is go.
MET,
Met is go.
MM,
MM is go.
recovery,
Recovery is go.
LD sub.
LD sub is go.
The go, no-go sequence is complete. We are currently T-minus 11 minutes and 24 seconds in counting. We go for the terminal count at T-minus 10 minutes, and from this time on, the free hold procedure is in effect.
So there you have it. That is confirmation from Mission Control that all systems are healthy and we will be proceeding with the remainder of the count. The T0 liftoff time remained 06:27 New Zealand local time or 15:27 UTC. Let's take a closer look now at the Electron rocket on the pad and some of the tweaks we've made to enable today's recovery attempt. Electron is a two-stage to orbit launch vehicle that stands 18 metres tall. Starting from the bottom, that's where 9 of its 3D printed Rutherford engines are located. Together, they power the first stage, the section of the rocket from the engines up to the red band you see on your screen there, that indicates where the first stage is connected to the second stage. It's this first stage of Electron that we'll be attempting to recover during today's mission, while the rest of the rocket, that second stage and the kick stage carrying the payload, travels on to low Earth orbit. Now, around that interstage area, there is a reaction control system that includes tiny thrusters on the rocket's exterior that help reposition the first stage as it descends back to Earth. Packaged inside the top of the first stage also are 2 parachutes to slow down the first stage for the recovery attempt, the smaller drogue parachute that deploys first, and the larger main parachute that our recovery helicopter will attempt to connect with. Rounding off Electron at the top, we have the second stage with a 10th Rutherford engine. We optimise with a large exhaust nozzle for the conditions of space. And connected to the second stage is the rocket's third stage, which we call the kick stage, which has the MATS satellite attached on top. Now, this kick stage has its own little engine called the Curie engine, which is used to circularise the orbit it's deployed to before the payload is deployed itself, marking the end of the mission. Now, Electron might be considered a small rocket, but snagging a 1-ton object falling from the sky is a big ask for a helicopter, and one of the challenges for our recovery team was finding one large enough to safely catch it and bring it back to land. Our Sikorsky S-92 helicopter, though, is up to the task. It's one of the few helicopters large and reliable enough to catch a rocket mid-air. It's capable of lifting up to 5 times the weight of Electron's first stage. The Sikorsky S-92 global fleet has accumulated more than 2 million flight hours and completed more than 91,000 search and rescue missions. Its other missions have included coastal and border control, emergency response, disaster relief, and head of state transportation, and now catching rockets in the air. The helicopter flies with a crew of 3, a pilot, a co-pilot, and a rocket spotter. To complete its rocket-catching mission, the Sikorsky S-92 has been modified to include extended-range fuel tanks for open ocean flights, a capture hook on a long line to catch the parachute line attached to Electron's booster, pilot assists for recovery operations, including a bubble window to better see the returning rocket, and displays with position and direction information for the intercept, along with some other minor modifications. To practice our rocket catching skills, we have carried out several helicopter tests and achieved some major mission milestones on our road to reusability. Here is the timeline of our recovery operations to date.
Catch Me If You Can is a...
Our recovery team are very eager to get back this latest Electron and assess its condition after launch. The first stage will be inspected inch by inch to discover how well its components survived the return to Earth and what could be a candidate for reflight testing. We are now heading into the final countdown to liftoff of Catch Me If You Can with just over 2 minutes on the clock. The launch range is clear, Electron and the MAT satellite are healthy, and our recovery team is ready and in position for launch and recovery. Shortly, Electron's flight computer will take over and run down the clock as the final pre-launch milestones are reached. Then it's on to the 10-second countdown to liftoff for Catch Me If You Can. Let's hand it over now to Mission Control.
AVPs are on internal power. Vehicles fully on internal power. AFTS is green and enabled for flight.
Flux load is complete. System is in recirculation. Anti-geysering is disabled.
Stage 1, stage 2, dress for flight.
High flow engine purge enabled. Deluge is activated.
And we are T-minus 19 seconds and counting. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off.
Beginning to pitch over.
Stage 1, propulsion, nominal.
Rocket Lab Launch Complex 1 and is on its way to space carrying the MAT satellite. Our rocket recovery attempt is also now officially underway. Coming up on supersonic speeds, Electron will be traveling faster than the speed of sound as it approaches its first mission milestone, maximum aerodynamic pressure. Electron's Rutherford engines will throttle down slightly to pass this pressure point, and once cleared, we should hear the call from mission control that the rocket has passed max Q.
Vehicle is supersonic. Approaching max Q. And vehicle has cleared max Q.
Stage 1.
There we go. As expected, Electron has cleared that first milestone and is continuing nominally. Electron's Rutherford engines will now throttle back up as the mission continues on, and all looks nominal for propulsion there, with that beautiful view of LC1 below. In about a minute, we will reach the point in the launch when Electron separates itself. Known as stage separation, the Rutherford engines on the first stage will shut down for the rocket to safely separate before the engine on the second stage can fire up and carry on with the mission. The calls for these events will proceed as MECO, or main engine cutoff, stage separation, and then second stage engine start. And here is when our recovery team begin their countdown to the helicopter catch as the first stage will begin its journey back to Earth. Standing by now, though, for those calls.
"15 seconds to staging.
Entered burnout detect mode.
MECO confirm.
Stage separation successful.
Stage 2 ignition.
And as you can see, we have had a successful MECO and stage separation, followed by the engine on Electron's second stage igniting successfully. You can see that by the red hot glow of the Rutherford nozzle on your screen there. For recovery, the first stage is now beginning its journey back home. The trajectories for both stages are looking good so far. The next mission event will be fairing separation on the second stage, coming up in just a few moments.
Fairing jettison succeeded.
In fact, actually, there it goes. Electron's fairing has been deployed, and Matt is now exposed
Stage
to
two
space
guidance
while
is
remaining
nominal.
attached to the rocket's second stage as it continues on the path to orbit. The vehicle is now traveling at a speed of more than 8,000 kilometers an hour with an altitude of 129 kilometers. Meanwhile, Electron's first stage continues its migration over the South Pacific Ocean. When it separated from the second stage, it was traveling at such high speed that its trajectory continued upward from the momentum. But in another minute or so, it is expected to reach the highest point of that arc, otherwise known as the apogee, and from there, descend toward the capture zone, where our recovery helicopter is ready and on standby to proceed. We should hear the call out from Mission Control, and we'll keep up that first stage camera view on your left for as long as we can.
Stage 2 propulsion, still nominal.
The telemetry data for both stages is on your screen and coming back nice and clear, showing the progress of the first stage. We're just starting to see that arc back downward as it heads towards Earth, whereas on the right, that telemetry line is heading upward as it should as Electron's second stage continues to orbit. This camera view on Electron's first stage tells us a lot about how well the booster is faring on its way back to Earth, because with the stage hitting speeds of up to 8 times the speed of sound, we may actually see a glow at the bottom, and that would be from plasma, which forms during the descent as a condition of a very fast atmospheric re-entry.
Stage 2 guidance still nominal, 200 seconds remaining.
Electron's second stage, though, continuing to orbit with propulsion firing hot and nominal. Fairly soon, Electron, though, will need another power source for Rutherford's electric pump cycle. We use batteries for this, but like all batteries, they run out of juice after extended use. So Electron performs an action called the battery hot swap, where it swaps over to a new set mid-flight to keep the engine running for longer. Sometimes you can catch a glimpse of these battery packs falling away. So let's listen in for the call out from Mission Control and watch our screen for those battery packs.
Engine is starting to throttle down.
Hot swap successful.
Battery jettison confirmed.
There's that call from Mission Control. Battery hot swap is confirmed. The cameras are a little bit late, but we can confirm those batteries did swap over as planned.
Stage 2 propulsion,
Motor
still nominal.
pressed.
HVP discharge holding nominal.
Stage 2 guidance in terminal, 25 seconds to go.
Sico, confirm.
Stage 3 separation confirmed.
Nominal transfer orbit.
There we go. That's the call for SICO, or second engine cutoff, and stage separation has been confirmed. That means MATS and Electron's kick stage have commenced their first pass around Earth in its initial orbit. Around 40 minutes into this coasting phase, the kick stage's engine will light up to move it into a circular orbit position where payload deployment will be performed. We'll come back to that final mission action, but while MATS takes a cruise, we are full screen with the camera view from the helicopter as our pilots move in for the mid-air rocket catch attempt. Between the main parachute deployment and the time it would take Electron to reach the ocean, our pilots have about 10 minutes only to complete the catch. And catching a rocket with a helicopter is a tricky operation because within that time pressure, our pilots need to control the Sikorsky, balance the swing of the hook underneath while it's attached to the helicopter's line, hook it precisely to Electron's parachute line, and then secure the rocket beneath them for the journey back home. Now, right now, the mission is on track to do all of those things, but just in case, we are prepared with a nearby ship should we need to fish Electron out of the water instead today. To make sure you catch Electron gliding into view, keep your eye on the edge of the screen where we expect to see it today. Just a note on the soft water splashdown I mentioned before. If we did that today, that would not be a failure for our recovery program. In fact, we've performed several of them across our missions to date, and most recently, we were able to refire a Rutherford engine that had been returned from the ocean. Right now, though, we have an anxious wait with our fingers crossed until we might see Electron again on our screen. Our rocket spotter on board the helicopter has a few more tools to help them with this task, obviously. They've got this view and the view out the window, of course, but also those display screens that plot theirs and Electron's positions with telemetry and where they might intersect for that catch attempt. While the Sikorsky has been positioned out here over the ocean during mission operations, it's got a range of 950 kilometers. That means it can safely capture and return Electron to land following a successful catch. And now that Electron's first stage is empty of propellant, it will weigh approximately a ton in dry weight. Our Sikorsky, though, is rated to be able to carry up to 5 times that, so we've got good margins for a catch and carry back to land. Our Rocket Lab team back here at Mission Control are watching as anxiously as I am to see that Electron glide into view. Whether they've touched this mission themselves or have supported across some other functions through the business, everyone is just as invested in seeing Electron brought back to the factory. The recovery team themselves are stationed in various support locations. Some are in the Mission Control Center, others are on our recovery vessel on the ocean near the capture zone, and of course we have the helicopter pilots as part of that catch attempt too. For those of you just tuning in, a quick reminder that we have had a successful first part of the mission, and the MATS satellite, as you can see on your right-hand side with that graphic, is in a transfer orbit on its way to its final destination. Hello again from Mission Control. We have just had an update from the pilots, and unfortunately it looks like we are not going to bring Electron home dry today, but we do have the backup option of an ocean splashdown. We'll bring you updates on that ocean operation in the hours to come, but for now we are going to leave you with the views of Electron's kick stage as it moves through its transfer orbit on the way to payload deployment for MATS. We'll be back for payload deployment at around T+50 minutes. See you then. Welcome back to the webcast of Rocket Lab's 32nd Electron mission, Catch Me If You Can, our mission to attempt to recover Electron's first stage after launch while delivering the MATS satellite to low Earth orbit for the Swedish National Space Agency. Launch today included a successful on-time liftoff at 06:27 New Zealand local time or 17:27 UTC. After passing through max Q, Electron completed a clean first and second stage separation. And while the second stage continued on its journey, Electron's first stage began its journey back to Earth. And so far, a flawless primary mission for today's launch for OHB Sweden and the National Space Agency in Sweden too. But unfortunately, though, we are not bringing Electron home dry on this mission due to some telemetry loss from the rocket's first stage during re-entry. As standard procedure for safety, we pull the helicopter out of the recovery zone if this happens, so we couldn't attempt a catch today. But this is what test programs are all about, pushing hardware and systems to their limit and iterating. Fortunately, though, we do have an ocean recovery as a backup option, as we've successfully demonstrated several times now, and we can confirm that Electron completed a safe splashdown. So the recovery vessel will be moving in to collect the stage very soon. Taking what we've learnt today and pushing toward the ultimate goal of launch, catch and repeat, we will be back with the helicopter for another mid-air capture attempt. In the meantime, though, our mission to deploy the MATS satellite for the Swedish National Space Agency has continued on to its destination in low Earth orbit. The kick stage has completed its first pass in an elliptical orbit of Earth, and we're now waiting for its Curie engine to ignite and position the kick stage in Sun-Synchronous orbit at a 585-kilometre altitude, where we will deploy the MATS payload. Those events should happen in quick succession after the kick stage's Curie lights up. Let's bring up this animated view of that payload deployment and listen in to mission control for the callouts. Launch, officially bringing the count of satellites deployed by Rocket Lab to 152. Congratulations and thank you to OHB Sweden and to the Swedish National Space Agency for choosing Electron for your mission. We're going to end the broadcast here, but keep an eye on Rocket Lab's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram pages for updates on Electron's journey back. My name is Muriel Baker. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Rocket Lab Mission Control, signing off.